Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the PatORG podcast. We're at season 24. This is the Art of the Spiel, the podcast breaking down everything happening in season 24, The Art of the Steal. And today we're going to be breaking down the premiere episode of the season, titled What Is Happening, courtesy of DeLuca on the Guggenheim tribe. And with me, as always, to break down the happenings of these crazy tribes is from season 22, Nico. Nico, welcome.
Hello, Sarah. What is happening is correct and very much the feeling on my end. So, looking forward to trying to get into what exactly happened this episode.
Yes, and thankfully we're not alone, left to our own devices today to break everything down. We're very happy to have on the podcast as our guest today, from season 21 of PatORG, the fifth place finisher, Steven. Steven, welcome. How's it going?
Hey, thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm really excited to talk about this episode. It really is one of the wilder premieres that we've had in a while. So, yeah, it what is happening is very accurate because there's just so much to follow and so many things to keep track of. So, excited to be here.
Really excited to have you here today. When Nico, Nelson, and I did our preseason podcast, we speculated with a 22-person cast, things might get a little crazy, and that might have been an underestimation of everything we've experienced over the past 48 hours or so. We have two tribes, 11 people on each tribe. Both tribes went to tribal, and it's hard to know where to start here, but we ended the episode with a quit on one tribe and a unanimous vote on the other. So let's break down what happened that ultimately led to Adrian quitting the game here and being our official 22nd place finisher. Nico, what did you think of the events leading up to that ending we got?
Just crazy. I mean, we've seen in like kind of close to real time, uh, Nick is saying like he's bummed about this because it means they don't get to enact their plan. And little does he know, we already had 7 out of 11 possible votes in, specifically for Nick. So lucky escape from Nick. And yeah, we'll get to how I guess it all went down, or at least try to unpick how this all happened. So just to recap, I guess we have on the Louvre tribe, we have Adrian, Andy, Brian, Conrad, Floyd, Hunter, Jesse, Justin, Nick, Talia, and Tom. Um, and yeah, I think early on we saw there was kind of a bit of a split as far as the tribe into sort of like a younger, older sort of theme. With I think Tom kind of floating a bit in the middle. Um, yeah, Stephen, what did you sort of make of how everything kind of started over on Louvre?
The Louvre was very interesting because they kind of hit the ground running. It felt like they started playing the game almost immediately. And that there was a very much that distinct younger versus older. We have Talia, who I think is one of the younger people on the cast in general, um, and Andy, who is 11. I think it's Andy mentioned in his confessionals. He's like 11 years older than her, and feels like he can't really work with her because of that age difference. And so people have already started to separate themselves just purely based on age more than anything. And it's kind of left some people caught in the middle with they're not sure what to do or where to go. Um, it's really weird. This conversation kind of happens a lot in orgs where people look to age as one of the defining distinctions and like what keeps you um different, like me versus them. And so personally, age shouldn't, for me, it doesn't matter when it comes to an alliance. I was part of CCAS where I was the oldest one in an alliance with three college kids. And so it shouldn't matter, but it's just funny how this distinction between age and I think gender too is going to come up at some point, but these divisions that we kind of create in our minds play into the game a lot more than we think they do or that they should, honestly.
Yeah, that's such a good point. You mentioned sort of like the 11-year age gap, and I guess that was very close to what you had in your sort of very sort of dominant kind of alliance in a sense. Um, and as you mentioned, gender's another one. I think again Andy's the one to point out that he kind of feels good about Adrian, but not so. But he's got that thing with Talia. He's not sure where they're going to be able to connect. But he thinks Zoe will kind of instantaneously have the fact that they're both the only women on their tribe as a thing to bond over. So I guess early days, these are things people can look to for what can connect people together. But realistically, when you get into DMs and you start chatting this, you find out so much more about these people than that, especially in a Discord sort of version of the game, where you are kind of getting to the core of people in a sense. Like it doesn't have to be about sort of necessarily like demographics and things like that. Obviously, there's the things that can lead to opening conversations, but I guess more usually Survivor fans. So it just gives a way to get things all started off. And we do see Tom as one of the people who was also in that like older alliance, but then also. Did he get added? I feel like he was in the older alliance. See, it's so hard to keep track. But he was also grouped into the quote unquote younger alliance as well. Um, so we do see how easy it is to like that. All those lines blur at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was kind of wild to see how many alliances were formed right at the beginning of the game. I think most of them were on the Louvre tribe, and I think there were seven tracked total before the first immunity challenge even started. So, what do you guys think about those early alliances forming? I know last season we had sort of the joke in Spec Lounge about Carolyn's alliances on Airwalk so early on. So, is it beneficial to jump into a lot of alliances that quickly?
I think jumping into that many alliances so quickly, you spread yourself thin, and like it's good to have your hands in, or your feelers in a lot of areas to kind of get a sense of what's going on. But someone I want to I think it might have been DeLuca. I don't remember, but someone mentioned how they noticed they were in a lot of alliances with the same people and then were excluding certain people from other alliances and they felt weird about it. And so I think you need to establish at least one or two just great alliances right off the bat, day one. And then after that, maybe work towards getting an idea where everyone is after that, right? I mean, even on my season, I made um, a pretty game defining alliance during the swap that kind of destroyed CCAS. But you need to be open to having more alliances, but having so many right off the bat, for me, I don't think is a good idea ever. But that's just me. I don't know what you guys think.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think it's more important at the beginning to establish like these one-on-one connections and see who you feel good about, but obviously you don't want to say no to the alliance. And I think it's always better to not be the person making them, being the person added to them is definitely you're in a better position. And I think you're right about what DeLuca said about clocking that there's a bunch of alliances with various people excluded. And I think she sort of called out Chris as being the person over on Guggenheim who was establishing a lot of those alliances. And we do see that echoed throughout some other people's cons that perhaps Chris is overplaying kind of early on. But yeah, but back over to the Red Tribe. Any other early signs of what's to come there, Nico?
Yeah, I mean, again, we see all these alliances and so many configurations of people, people kind of looping people in and saying, "Hey," I think Tom at one point just discussed like his opening message in one of the alliance chats was something as simple as, "Hey, I like you all, so hopefully we could work together." And it just a lot of that sort of really gamey energy out the gate, which I think obviously helps when other people are doing it too. But as you say, you don't want to be the person saying no. So it's so hard to work out what to do in this spot when people are being really chaotic and it's almost like you don't want to stand out for being not chaotic, but I don't know, it's hard to determine what this is all going to lead up to, especially now we've kind of had all this energy going towards sort of blindside in the works that ultimately doesn't get to take effect.
Yeah, definitely. And on both tribes, another factor that came into play was inactivity. it doesn't seem like it's helpful to be one of the people early on, right after the marooning, when everyone's really excited to play, to not be active. And obviously, people have life things going on. Here in the US, it's a holiday weekend. Adrian has a wedding to attend that she's a part of, so that's taking away from her time. Mars on Guggenheim is also really AFK, and just happens to sweep in at the last minute and get the target off of her by winning the immunity challenge out of nowhere. So, can you talk a little bit more about Adrian and like the inactivity and how that was being handled on their tribe? Because it did seem like she was being protected quite a bit and probably wouldn't have gone home if she hadn't quit.
Yeah, it did seem there was some work put in specifically to kind of get the target off of Adrian. So that was kind of good work. I'm not sure what she managed to speak with people in DMs about, if she how much chance she got there. But I think people like, I hope I'm not getting this wrong, but Conrad, I think, was one of the people to come to her defense when she was kind of considered an easy vote. Um, she ultimately ends up being the second to last person, like trust ranking wise. But a lot of these, I think I saw a couple of trust rankings where she was in the top three. People just stating something as simple as the fact, well, we've not talked, so there's no reason for me to have lost her trust or for her to have lost my trust. And I'm just thinking, that is such an interesting way to think of trust in this game. I always think of it more as something that has to be built, especially out of the gate, versus something to be lost. I mean, usually you lose it after you've kind of given someone some trust and they've given you a reason. But we saw some people kind of rank her high simply because she's not said anything shady. So it's just really interesting to get the different perspectives from people about what constitutes a high trust ranking and not. We do see a lot of things flipping around. Particular, I think one person to note was Talia's trust rankings. At one point, go from Conrad being last, and I think Hunter being first. Um, Let me just double check. Yes, and then by the time she updates it, Conrad's shot all the way up to third, and Hunter's gone to last. So even in this first vote, so much chaos can happen that can keep things like what can be an easy inactive vote from going awry. Ultimately, the fact that she was inactive, I guess it's not helpful to speculate about why she ultimately does leave the game, but that does ultimately end up being what saves Nick from otherwise being the target here. Anything from you, Stephen, about Louvre Tribe at this point?
I find Adrian's gameplay so fascinating because it feels like at the start she had to have messaged everyone at least a couple times to garner enough traction for people to want to keep her despite her not doing the challenge and not being very active at all over the course of the last couple days. That there's something crazy going on there where normally you look at that and say, oh, she's gone. Okay, well, she's not here, she's not participating in the challenge. Okay, easy vote. Just get rid of the inactive player and we could figure out, any family drama that we might have at the next vote. But it was so fascinating to me how many people were so willing to save her game. And I wonder if part of it is just a general sense of um, compassion and understanding, knowing that she had a busy weekend and wanting to give her that opportunity to continue to play despite that. Um, which is also ironic given what happens on Guggenheim, but we'll save that for um, when we get there. But it's so fascinating how she had so much pull in how the vote went, despite not being active at all. Um, and it's funny that not only was she considered inactive, but Justin was another one who people said or thought was inactive solely based on the reasoning that he lives in, I think it's the Netherlands, if I'm not mistaken. And so the time difference has people kind of thrown a little bit, um, which stinks and it's tough for him. I know when I played my second org, we had some people that were from all over, someone from Germany, someone from, I think, Malaysia. And so you kind of just learn to work with it and deal with it. But here, when we have so many people from the US, um, they just don't know how to work around that. And it's weird that people are willing to work around Adrian and her absence, but not willing to work around Justin and something that he can't change. So one other thing I guess I will say that I find funny is one of the alliances we have on the Louvre is the Reddit recruits, and almost everyone that plays PatORG exclusively is a Reddit recruit. So I just had to say that because I thought it was really funny that everyone kind of realized, the people that were there realized, oh, we're all from Reddit, we're cool, but not really because we're all from Reddit, so we're all degenerates.
Yeah, I think it's actually kind of funny what some of these alliances are based on. The Reddit recruits is really funny because like everyone's from Reddit, like you said. The age alliances are like deteriorating quickly, kind of because people want to add people who are outside of like the specified demographics to their alliances. So I guess, I understand wanting to connect with on whatever level you can right away. And then slowly as you learn more about people, you don't want to close off your options for allies. So I get it, but that is really funny. Also, we start to learn more about the twist of the season, which is going to be an auction, and we have our first reward challenge, which is a puzzling puzzle. I know Nico tried it out. We had several do not
Uh,
finishes across both across both across both tribes here, but also some really impressive finishes. And a lot of people are able to earn money for that first auction item, which is an idol that will expire after the first tribal council. So what did you guys think of this item? Like what do you think the strategy is going into this in terms of placing your bids for an item like this. And obviously, it's going to be dependent on how safe you feel here, but maybe it's better to know where the idol is versus not, even if you do feel safe. So, any thoughts overall about how this first reward challenge went and how the various players approached it?
well, we do have Brian on the Louvre tribe who didn't even use the drop quote element really, and just Googled survivor quotes knowing that it was themed around that, and gets it in 2 minutes. So that was quite cool, and just goes to show not all of these challenges are as like you can game some things in a sense. Even if it's not, you might not want to use the word gaming because obviously it's hard to know always what the parameters of the game are, but he does get it done very quickly. As sorry to have heckled you there, Sarah, but I did try it myself, and my time was definitely very, very far away from the 2 minute mark. In fact, I think I was took like considerably longer than even the like last place, like non DNF. So, oh yeah, I won't talk too much on that. Um, and yeah, it's so many things to consider. I mean, I like the fact that it's anonymous and we get these code names, because realistically, you can target people for having advantages. You can target people for having currency, for having being able to get advantages down the line. So if people are able to sort of like piece things together and um, you know, be able to work out how much money people have, that can be something that could get you a reason to be targeted, even if I mean, now we're going to see that Talia has spent $400, I believe, on an idol that effectively, I won't say went to waste because it would have only given her safety for the round, and she got safety for the round. I mean, sure, you can argue that it would have given you some sort of like strategic like ways to have positioned things to then deflect votes or whatever, but ultimately she's safe uh, at the end of the day. So if that could be something she actually ends up using to her advantage if she can tell people that she's down on currency, or it might be the case that if people want alliance members that they can pull currency with because there is this sort of exchange system. There's just so many different ways to think about it that I wouldn't even know myself where to begin, but I don't think I would pull the trigger on the first vote just yet. Stephen, what about you? What are your thoughts on the auction twist?
I don't want to speak for anyone, but I will say Taylor is so excited for this twist and just the overall theme. Um, Being a New York girl, I'm sure she's just loving it. And so when we came up with this twist, we like the idea of the auction in the past, and just in general on Survivor. The way that the auction works and who bids what, how much, and the um, the dynamics that come from it. But having an auction every round and having it be sometimes an item that is blind, you don't know what you're going to get, is even more exciting. So I love how it's played out so far. I do feel a little bad for Talia that she kind of, she wasted money on fake protection, I guess, because she ultimately was protected in the end. But at the same time, I think it's really good for her that she's not outed as someone that won the um the prize, because now people can speculate as to who it was, maybe where the money went or who has how much. The dynamics are so much more different now because no one knows. Whereas on the other tribe, and I was kind of saying this in Spec Lounge the other day, some people were worried about DeLuca and how it would come across that she had bought and used the idol. Um, and I think looking at how, and I know we'll talk about DeLuca and her tribe in a minute, but looking at how everything went down over there, if I were playing with DeLuca and I saw that happen and she didn't tell me, I would be okay with it and I would understand, because DeLuca was rightfully paranoid for a while and really didn't want to go home. And so uh, it's just really exciting. A round one idol is huge, and it shows who's playing the game too, who goes for it. So this could have put a target on DeLuca, but I think ultimately most people are understanding, especially with the whole dilemma that happened on that tribe with her. So just it'll be interesting to see what other fun, crazy twists we have coming down the road. No spoilers, sorry.
Yeah, I appreciate the no spoilers, and I know we're jumping around a little bit with the tribes, but I do think it makes sense to talk about DeLuca and her choices related to the idol in this spot, since we're talking about the challenge and the auction. DeLuca like had some moments yesterday where she really started to spiral when she heard her name being thrown out, and socially it seemed like she had been doing the best on the tribe to that point based on trust rankings and just being in one, two, three, four alliances out of the five that existed on the tribe so far. She was really doing well, but people were starting to clock that she was doing well socially. Her name somehow got thrown out there. She started to panic. She decides to go for the idol. She gets the idol, immediately feels better about things. Um, and I also started to question whether it was a good idea for her to play it once she knew she was in a more secure spot. And especially if she wasn't going to tell her tribe mates, like you were saying, Steven, especially the people she's working with closely. I think having that kind of secret that early on will make you kind of look like a shady strategic player, someone who's playing the game hard. She did end up telling some people about the idol before she ultimately played it today. She didn't really need to play it. It was a unanimous vote. And she only got one vote. And so I don't know. I'm still not sure how I feel about that. I think it was the right move for her to go for the idol. I don't know if it was the right move for her to play it with not at least most of the tribe knowing that she was going to do it. But we'll see how that ends up playing out, because she does have a strong social game, so it could end up not being relevant at all going forward. Um, but then we get into the immunity challenge, which is really fun art theme challenge where everybody has to draw three pictures. The season logo, the piece of artwork that was used for the first immunity idol, and then a picture of Sandra that resulted in some really interesting artistic choices. So what did you guys think of how the first immunity challenge went down?
I personally am just so in love with this theme and how it translates to all these different aspects of the game. Like you mentioned, they drew the flower or tulip. Was it a tulip? I can't remember. I'm so bad with my memory. But the things that just connect to the different themes. So you've got the obviously challenge itself. The immunity idol ends up being one of the things that are represented there. Um, and yeah, it's just so fun to see this kind of artisticness being kind of come through in the game, and then you've got the critiquing afterwards. So it's something I really enjoy. I mean, we traditionally have like the first immunity challenge being sort of like a scavenger hunt in a sense. So it's nice seeing kind of the in real life element kind of give you a bit of flavor for these people beyond just kind of doing. I don't know, like an online game and like competing for scores. I mean, ultimately, we do see scores in the sense of like aggregated, like, you know, what they're willing to give to each other. And it's just kind of very interactive, and I think is a great way to kind of start the season, and it's a bit of fun. What about you, Stephen? What are your thoughts on it?
I loved everything about this challenge. And I think it's because we kind of break the mold a little bit. We don't do a scavenger hunt, which is kind of crazy because it feels like that's a PatORG staple, right? It was done on my season, it was done on your season, it was done on the following season, and we haven't done one yet here. But it fits the theme so well, and we get some great moments where I think everyone has said at least once in their confessionals, I'm so sorry, Queen Sandra. I hope you never see this. Apologizing profusely for what they've done to her. And I loved some of those drawings so much. Some were really good. Like, some were actually really good. Some took a minimalistic approach, which was fun. And then others were just unhinged and wild. And I can't stop laughing at them. And I ultimately tweeted Sandra some of the pictures because I felt like she needed to see them. And I apologize to whoever I used your pictures to send to her. But no, it was a good fun, and it was in an appreciation of the Queen of Survivor. But this challenge is it's interesting because I think many of us have seen in other orgs this type of challenge where um, instead of one tribe winning outright, we send both to tribal council where one person wins individual immunity, and you make the other tribe basically pick who the winner is without knowing. And so that's kind of fun. It relies on a different set of skills than I think people would be either comfortable sharing or um, maybe a little more niche. But I think it gave us everything we wanted. We got really good drawings, we got really bad drawings, and we got some wild results. I'll pass it to you guys to talk about the results, but the results were amazing.
Yeah, on both tribes, we end up with winners who very well and probably would have been targets for this first vote here on both sides. So, on the Guggenheim side, we end up seeing Mars coming in last minute, who had been seriously AFK, not heard from by any tribe mates, but pulls out the challenge and comes in and wins. So, Mars, who likely would have been a target here, didn't finish on the reward challenge, but wins the immunity challenge. And then Justin on the other side. So, what kind of chaos did that cause, Nico?
This is just what you want to see, isn't it? I mean, unless if you specifically have got a vendetta against someone, you want them to go home. Just narratively, it's so fun to just see the chaos of everyone having a plan, and then lo and behold, the person that would have made it maybe a bit more predictable uh, ends up winning. And we see that, as you mentioned, on both tribes. So, what were the chances of that happening? Especially when it's kind of marked as for like the inactivity portion. So you kind of think someone is more on the inactive side is less likely to do well in a challenge. But here we see it ultimately does end up happening. I mean, I don't really know what more there is to say besides I just love when this happens and ultimately has created for some more like I mean ultimately the other vote before we right not getting too much into what the vote for the tribe that actually went to tribal went, but that ended up I guess being sort of fairly kind of one-sided in a sense. But on the other tribe, we were looking to have quite the messy thing, and it's not been resolved. People don't know that things are unresolved in a sense. So um, that's going to really build up for some interesting things to see in the following episode. What about you, Stephen? What are your thoughts on this kind of crazy winning?
Seeing both sides and how they reacted. First of all, the way that both tribes reacted to going to tribal council, it kicked them all into gear. I think people were playing okay and maybe some a little too chaotically at the start, but as soon as they heard that it was both tribes going to tribal, everyone went insane and started panicking and started coming up with different plans and who said this and who said that and where should we go from here. And so the fact that you have Mars, who hasn't said a word since being cast, just kind of comes in randomly and wins the whole thing outright was insane. And then you have Justin, who was one of the primary targets on the Louvre. But the weird thing is, it felt like the Louvre tribe was almost going to be like an Arawak 2.0 because it felt like there were so many targets. Like most people kind of wanted Justin just to appease everybody. But even before Justin won immunity, it felt like it was still kind of up in the air who was going to go home. And it still very much was after Justin got immunity. There were names being thrown out everywhere. I think everyone at least heard their name once. If not, they heard multiple names multiple times, and nothing was solidified for a very long time, I think, on either tribe. Um, I know that the way that the votes looked on the Louvre tribe, it looked like it almost would have been unanimous, um, except for I think two people would have been on the outs. But just the chaos that the two people who were the most inactive and the aside from Adrian, uh, the main targets for the episode, both won immunity. That's like you can't write better TV than that. And so we kind of see it when both tribes prepare and go to tribal council, the fallout and how they have to plan for it and deal with each other and what they're saying to each other to prepare for voting someone out.
Yeah, the like communications that were happening in the various alliance chats, in the tribe chat, even in confessionals, was just so entertaining. I mean, like you said, like you can't write something that good. Like you couldn't have rigged this to have a better result, I feel like. And it's just so funny. Mars just like yeah, has a medical issue, so is excused for not being here. But for her to come in and just win there is just it's so amazing on Guggenheim. We've already had sort of like the DeLuca paranoia arc happening. And then we sort of see this target shifting on to CJ, seemingly out of nowhere. It maybe CJ just didn't get as many connections as everybody else. DeLuca also has her idol ready to go, and she has really strong social connections as well. But we really don't see too many other names coming out over on Guggenheim, and it does end, as was alluded to, in a unanimous vote against CJ, which he does sort of see coming.
Yeah, and I really felt for both DeLuca and CJ. DeLuca in her cons was very, very excited to play and wanted to stay, and good for her for getting the idol. And CJ was also the same. He had family stuff. It's a holiday weekend. And so I understand, I get that. Um, and he just felt like his alliances, would have protected him, but it seemed like he was just the next easy vote aside from Mars. And so he just kind of took the bullet there. It's really interesting because it felt like a couple people were playing really hard for no reason. Um, we look at like Cody and Chris, and their dynamic is really weird. And there was a whole thing with DeLuca and Chris where, man, I can't. It was so hard to follow. Let's see if we can find. Essentially, it sounds like Joey went to Chris and told Chris that DeLuca told Joey that Joey is her number one, and that DeLuca wanted to vote Chris out. So Chris gets confused and doesn't understand because he likes DeLuca and they had been getting along. And word gets back to DeLuca that she might be going home because, as much of as a social butterfly that she is, people have already day one clocked her as being a social threat, which is so scary and so sad for her. It's like she's, um, who can I compare her to? Like, kind of like Carolyn last season, someone that's very amicable, like Jeffrey too. They're very easy to talk to and personable, and people are already clocking that and saying, "Ooh, social threat. Maybe we get her out now." And so DeLuca gets confused as to how this all shifted on her, and she hears that it's because Chris is targeting her, and so we have this like he said, she said thing where Joey told Chris this, and Chris told Cody that, and Chase is now involved somehow, and ultimately it sounds like everyone thinks Chase made up the lie for no reason. or just to put a target on Chris and DeLuca. Ultimately, Chris and DeLuca talk through it. They apologize to each other about any miscommunication. Um, but it was weird. And the thing is, we never hear. I think we don't hear Chase's side of the story, so we don't even know what his motivations were for doing that. We just know that Chase heard from Joey, or Joey heard from Chase, or Chris heard from Joey. It's just like it's the worst game of telephone I've ever seen, and I hate trying to follow it. Hopefully, we did it justice now, trying to talk through it, but it was just so confusing. Ultimately, it worked itself out for now, and people were able to kind of look at CJ as someone who abstained from the challenge, which was big. He decided not to participate. And some people were worried that because he didn't do that, he wouldn't participate in a team challenge later on. And I think multiple people kind of say that's kind of what did him in.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there, but Steven, I think you did a really good job sort of breaking down the game of telephone given the amount of information you have. And I completely agree. The piece that we're missing here is what Chase's role is. Because his name is kind of coming up like, did Chase make up this lie? Is this like a Carolyn in the jungle situation? Like, how did this get misinterpreted or was it intentional? And I'm confused seeing this from Chase because Chase seems to be well liked within the tribe, very close with Gabriel, who's someone else who's doing really well in terms of the social game so far. He talked about sort of being like iffy on Chris, but talked about vibing really hard with them. Um, and Chris also had Chase as their number one first, but then said, he might have been involved in this lie. So it's very, very confusing how we got to that point. But like you said, ultimately, everyone is able to get on the same side with the vote here and vote out CJ as a target. And the justification is that he didn't participate in the challenge, which I understand. But I just wonder if there's more to it. Maybe he didn't connect with people as much because he wasn't as present as some of the other people. But they basically just transferred the Mars excuse onto CJ here as the reason to vote him out, saying, okay, Mars didn't participate in the first challenge, hasn't been here, we're gonna vote Mars out. Okay, Mars has immunity, who else hasn't been doing stuff? Oh, CJ didn't do the challenge, let's get him out. And so that's where it ultimately ends up. It's really messy how we got there, and there's definitely some like underlying trust things going on with some of the people in the tribe that might carry on to the next vote. But for now, we have a nice, clean, unanimous vote, which, as someone on the tribe, is something you probably want to see for the first vote of the season. So yeah, not as clean as you would have liked to see just to get to that point, but a unanimous vote is nice to see. So at least they feel some sort of trust with each other, even after all the deception that allegedly occurred here.
Exactly. And the sad thing is, this is not the only mess that we had to deal with. I'll defer to Nico to talk about what happened over on the Louvre tribe, but we had more chaos over there too. So we had chaos coming in from both sides, and it was so hard to keep track of, but it was so much fun to watch. So Nico, if you can just kind of run through what was happening with Talia and with Hunter and Nick and that whole thing, and everything leading up to tribal, if you can.
Right, okay, I'm gonna try, but bear with me whilst we go through it. So I think
No
Nick is
pressure, no pressure.
so Nick is the guy that I believe kind of got the sort of the Reddit Alliance, or is that what they called, the Reddit something or others? We'll just call it the Reddit Alliance for the sake of this. So he was kind of he's with a lot of people supposedly, and we see quite funnily like between Nick, Talia, and Brian, they all seem to have like weird kind of different opinions of each other, but I think it was kind of getting towards the place of being in a good place where they seemed like they maybe could have even been like a core three in some sense. Um, but then there is just a lot of messiness about what want to say. I get confused now between the Justin and Hunter sort of like faction, but um, oh God, bear with me, guys. So we have Talia, who, as I mentioned, had. Let me just defer to what I've written down trust ranking wise, just to make sure I get this right. Yeah, so Talia, as I mentioned before, had Hunter banging number one. After a discussion comes out that supposedly tells her that Hunter is actually coming after her, everything seems to go awry. Hunter's now bang at the bottom of her list. And then Nick is just seemingly, I'm guessing, being interpreted as someone who is just kind of being messy and like overplaying is what I've understood of it all. Um, and yeah, so we get to a place where there were just so many targets. It's so hard to even kind of go through what happened one by one. But we end up getting to a point somehow where there are 7 votes against Nick after all that, and Talia's got her lovely drawn out snake um, parchment ready for I want to say Hunter. Yes, Hunter again. Um, and they were expecting to get some sort of blindside going, and now we're going to be coming into the next episode where there's so much unresolved tension of what people thought was going to happen, but because no one actually had to do the act of formally having their vote revealed or whatever you want to call it, we do have almost like mirroring the other tribe where no one's kind of gone against each other. And yet we've had this complete messiness of votes flipping and the kind of age sort of split kind of being completely blurred. Um, I don't know if you could track what I was saying because I didn't know if I tracked it as I said it. Yeah, so what do we think about all this and what's going to happen kind of moving forward? Where do we see this going? Do you think with the craziness people are going to stick to their guns and try and follow through on what they planned? Or do you think with time, these are the type of people who are going to find another reason to do something else?
I want to give everyone the benefit of the doubt that they will use their brains. However, as we see multiple times in PatORG, it seems like no one has the one brain cell among the tribe at any given time. So it's hard to say. I was just looking through Hunter's cons to kind of figure out what happened between him and Talia and Nick, because they established like a day one alliance, and I think they were based on age. I think it was between them three being the youngest, and then Tom, Adrian, and Floyd being the oldest, with um, everyone else kind of just falling in the middle. And so Hunter wanted to shift and stir the pot a little bit by telling Justin that his name was on the chopping block. And then that kind of opened up some doors for him to kind of scheme with Justin. And then he wanted to think about targeting Tom or Jesse or Conrad. And then he said, maybe I'll target Talia or Nick too. But I want to keep them as social meat shields, is what he says. Um, And then he goes, I like Adrian and I like Justin and don't want them gone, which is hilarious because Justin and Adrian are quote unquote the two like AFK people on the tribe. He lets Adrian know that her name's on the block. Um, he doesn't want her going home. It's so weird. It's so weird that we don't see anything on our end what Adrian's doing, but clearly something was happening behind the scenes that she was getting enough information to keep herself safe. And so ultimately, Hunter has worked himself into with multiple people, and he thought maybe we target Talia, and thought, oh, maybe I can get Nick to flip on Talia with me. And then Nick went and told Talia, and it just created this kind of snowball where Talia and Nick are now upset at Hunter and want him out. He goes, Talia and Nick, please don't hate me for flipping on y'all. Sorry. Justin and Adrian seem more trustworthy, which is wild to me, just wild. Um, so this leaves so much tension in the tribe and so much conflict that I think because the tribes are so big, there's going to be so many people vying for pull. So many people want to have a say in who goes home next, and it's not going to be as easy to get what they want. If the tribes were smaller, I think it would be easier depending on who was where, obviously. And maybe you guys can talk to that, what you think between playing on a small tribe versus a big tribe, because I played on a tribe of 10 on my season, and it's different. The dynamic is different. And so I'm curious to see who takes charge, who leads the next vote, and who tries to lead the next vote, and if that gets them voted out. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, the dynamics of a smaller tribe versus a bigger tribe are very different, I think. And it's just a matter of like, you have to get more numbers on a bigger tribe, so you have to extend some amount of trust to people that you might not feel as good about. So it just depend, you have to consider how much information do I give to earn trust to people, but you don't want to be spreading too much information and let people find out eventually that you're talking about them, in a negative way as a potential target, that kind of thing. So it is really, really tricky. Something that's happening kind of right now that has me a little distracted on Guggenheim is the Chase DeLuca, Gabriel and Joey alliance is talking about next targets, and it seems like they're leaning a little bit toward Cody. Some of them still have those Chris connections, and I haven't seen Katie's name coming out, but Chase is clocking the Chris, Cody, Katie alliance, which will remain unnamed as a trio. Um, and so, I think that Cody might be in a little danger here, and we actually saw Chris yesterday also talking a little bit about possibly wanting to turn on Cody as well, um, at some point. So I think that's the direction it might be heading right now, but of course that could change in any matter of time over on Guggenheim.
Can we just talk about really quick how in that tribe chat or in that group chat, how was it Chris? Who was it? Someone an alliance chat said, so the target is Chase today, right? And Chase was in that same group chat. Like,
Yeah, that was awful. I felt, yeah.
I think it was Chris, right? Chris said that.
Yeah.
Oh god.
Yeah. So we've seen a couple instances of that. We saw that on the other tribe as well. Like Hunter's name being brought up to him accidentally too. So it just, it's the troubles with Discord, I think, and keeping track of all of these alliances can be tough. So hopefully that doesn't have too many negative repercussions right away.
Right. I mean, we did see it again, as you mentioned, on the Louvre tribe, where it did seem to be a legitimate typo where someone had said their name to them. So you have this dichotomy of which one is it? Like, is it a genuine mistake or have you messed up? And I think that can really sort of mess with your head because there's no real way to verify unless you hear from other people that that was the plan. Um, so that can really mess with you. And just to go back to what you mentioned earlier, Stephen, about kind of larger versus smaller tribes. I mean, me and Sarah kind of saw firsthand on the tribe of five. It only took sort of we were on a tribe of five, and so it only took 3 votes to kind of flip the vote. So when there is that bigger uh, alliance, you have to kind of reach out and kind of secure a lot more to get a vote to flip. But a lot of these people seem quite chaotic and willing to move around. I mean, it's still the early days where it's hard to kind of tie yourself down to someone. If you find out more information about them, that's more likely to shift your opinion. So yeah, there's just so many unknowns, and I like that I don't, even as you're saying that the chase could be the target, there's so much time and so much like personality to go round that could mean that we just don't know what's going to happen in the coming rounds. But I love that in Survivor, and especially with this twist on top of it, where there's still a lot of more unknowns about that and how that's all going to work. That I don't think we're going to be left bored. I think I'll say that for sure.
I do want to ask you guys, in regards to the twist, are there any advantages or twists that you would like to see or think might come into play through the auction? Um, I like I said, no spoilers or anything, but I just kind of want to see where your guys' heads are at and what you think would be a fun twist or a fun advantage to kind of throw into the mix here.
Well, this is actually something I was thinking about. So the fact that we have a season called The Art of the Steal, I would be worried about some sort of stealing advantage coming up. And so that would definitely be one of the things deterring me from getting one of these early advantages. I mean, uh, it's in the name, there's the word steal. We've seen on Survivor recently this sort of knowledge is power kind of steal and advantage thing come up. So that would be on my mind. I would not want something like that and then kind of lose my currency and an advantage. So I could imagine, I mean, the word steal just coming into play in some capacity, whatever that might be. What about you, Sarah? What sort of things do you think we might potentially see?
Yeah, I love the idea of the theme playing into the auction, like in terms of stealing stuff. I would love to see some like unconventional type of things. Like, what if they can steal currency from each other, like anonymously? What if they can steal time with someone from the other tribe? I think the past couple seasons we've had pre merge twists that involved cross tribal like meetings of some sort where you can talk to people on other tribes. I think I would like to see something like that. Those have been resulted in some really fun interactions. So I think I would love to see some sort of cross tribal interaction. And then just something like unexpected, like stealing of currency, or stealing of even like, not, I don't want to say immunity, but like advantages, like the knowledge is power type of deal. So yeah, I would love to see something like that.
Taking my notes down just in case we need some. Just kidding. Yeah, no, it's really exciting, and it's kind of fun to think of different ways to um, kind of come up with these advantages that I think sometimes don't work on the show, but they work in Discord really, really well, right? So, um, what I will say, I guess, is, um, we're thinking of things that maybe have to do with a heist, like you said, like stealing things, or um, or just being sneaky overall. I love a cross tribal communication, and I think I might be impartial because on my season it was insane and a lot of fun. Essentially, when one tribe lost, the winning tribe would send someone to the other tribe to kind of be a spy, and if they wanted, they could use their vote to help someone over there, but at the same time they would lose it at their next tribal. And then we get the Danny comes to my tribe, and we convince him to vote someone completely random and get him to waste his vote. And it was glorious. It won both best and worst move that season. So I would love to see maybe that twist come back. I would love to see um, maybe some wacky kind of idols at play, or maybe you could like leave a note to someone. I don't know, but it's been a lot of fun to kind of think of different ways to not trip up the players, but keep them on their toes. And especially when you're thinking of a heist type season, you really want to keep people on their toes. So, really, really excited for what's coming further with the auction. I hope you guys are looking forward to that too.
Absolutely. As you say, there's so much potential for this twist and directions it could go. You mentioned about keeping people on their toes. I don't think we have to worry about that with this cast regardless, but it's, yeah, just kind of things being out in the open, or like being aware that there's going to be something to be won each round, whether it's kind of known what it is or not, is going to keep people constantly guessing, and like a level of paranoia that's heightened from even just regularly playing this game, which can already be like crazy high. So that's just going to lead to, I think, more messiness, which I personally am a fan to see. And especially a fan when people can navigate through that and still manage to come out on top. So that's something I'll be looking for, how someone kind of uh, manages to use what's going on throughout, and how much that has to play in what ultimately maybe the winner has going on for them. Like, is it going to be like a huge part of several people's undoings? There's so much like to expect from this, and I'm really looking forward to what we're going to see.
I agree
Otherwise,
completely.
no,
Yeah.
I'll let you go, Sarah.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think there's so much potential in a season about stealing. We've already seen that these tribes are here to play. There's been so much exciting slash questionable gameplay so far just here in the first round. Love that Patrick is giving them a reprieve with not individual immunity coming up now. It's going to be a tribe immunity. So that should cause a different dynamic here as well. I'm curious to see them work together too, to see whatever that could be. We've already started on the next reward challenge, which is math based. Hate that. But mixed results so far there. And yeah, I think we have a lot to look forward to. So I'm very excited.
Got to keep the spectators on their toes too, and that's all I'm saying.
Absolutely. And we definitely have been. Spec Lounge has been popping so far. Lots of opinions coming in. A lot of people's drafts affected today as well. I feel like Adrian and CJ were two of the most drafted people. And to see them both go out here, even several people had drafted both of them. So really, really wild start to the season here. And yeah, I think that's all I got so far. I we could get into more like about like where we see people on the tribes and so forth, but I think overall there's like so much in flux that it could change it at any moment. So I want to see how the next immunity plays out.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I mean, we haven't talked about Amoya, we haven't talked about Danny, not really Gabriel, um, and that's just on one tribe, you know. But I think they're playing a little under the radar, which is good for them. And we kind of see the same with like Jesse and Floyd, and a little bit from Conrad and Brian too, where they're not standing out as much as some of the other people. So it's really hard to kind of see where they're at the moment. Um, but we still got plenty of game left, and we still got lots of time to get to know them, and for them to either impress us or um, join us in Spec Lounge soon. So looking forward to the rest of the season for sure.
Yeah, there are so many people we haven't even managed to touch on just because of how much crazy stuff was going, and not by sort of faults of their own. They've been getting pretty decent sort of like ideas of what's happening in a sense from confessionals, at least in relation to people's own opinions. We've had a decent turnout for trust rankings, so we love to see things like that. Um, yeah, just really excited to see where on earth this is gonna go next. Okay, any sort of like, I guess, final thoughts before we kind of get ready for seeing what on earth is going to happen?
I think it's honestly, if your name wasn't mentioned today, I think it's a good thing. I think it means you're probably in a good spot moving forward. So you don't want to be the star of the first episode, I think.
Exactly, I agree with you there. Um, I'm hoping that my draft can stay intact for a while. I got DeLuca as my winner pick, holding faith that she can make it far. Um, and I think I also drafted Tom and Danny. I also had Adrian, like most other people, so I already got a loss there. But really, really excited to see just where this is going to go and what other things Patrick has cooking for us.
Absolutely, yeah. I went from winning the draft to having Adrian, my winner pick, go home first. So really, anything can happen in this game, and I'm very much looking forward to what this is going to happen. So if there's nothing else, this has been the art of the spiel. Thanks for listening, guys, and we will catch you next time.